Good morning, everybody. My name is Lori White. I'm the president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, and we are here today as a collective community of people who are concerned about our economic development rankings to reinforce the message that fixing our bridges, our roads, and our highways is an absolute necessity and a business imperative. Last spring and last fall, we called on the governor and the General Assembly, when they weren't aligned on this issue, to get together to develop a realistic approach for resolving the deplorable condition of our roads and bridges. In the intervening months, they have done just as we asked. And we'd like to commend them for acting responsibly and for not burying their heads in the sand and saying that everything is going to be just fine. In the way of context, Area Development Magazine calls infrastructure quality and accessibility the #1 factor in contemporary economic development, and that includes bridges, highways, runways, railways, and ports. And if anybody is interested in reading a little bit further about it, I will direct you to the Q4 2015 edition of Area Development Magazine, where they talk about the top location factors for business and industry, and they rank them on a scale of 1 to 10. And you could read for yourself what some of the factors are. Rhode Island's 50 out of 50 ranking puts us at the bottom of the pack on the #1 issue that matters to business. Let me repeat that. We are dead last in the nation on the #1 issue that matters to business. We must deal with the crisis, and we must deal with it now, and we must start there. The Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce has tackled our bottom-of-the-pack rankings on a whole host of other issues all over the years, and that includes taxes. We have played a forceful role in arguing for improvements at T.F. Green Airport, the Port of Providence, at Quonset Point with the addition of the third freight rail. We've talked about the necessity of MBTA and Amtrak service and greater connectivity to points all along the East Coast. And we've talked about maritime pier dredging. Rodeworks is a natural extension of those arguments. I have said it over and over again, Rhode Island cannot be an outlier on this issue. I was just reading another article in Area Development, my favorite publication, which reflects on the exponential growth of e-commerce. Economic development analysts say that distributors need and want to be close to dense population centers. Their primary business objective is guaranteeing and let me repeat this very slowly, fast, seamless, consistent, and friction-free delivery experiences. Our local conditions do not meet those standards. Everyone knows that. As a long-term economic development strategy, Rhode Island must position itself to be able to accommodate today's industry practices and tomorrow's growth industries. Our residents have been paying for other states good roads and bridges. They pay it every time they get an online shipment where freight has been tacked onto the order. They pay it every time they buy something in a brick-and-mortar establishment where freight has been tacked on to the order. The shippers have incurred tolls all along the way, unless, of course, they're delivered by drones, but we haven't seen that happen just yet. Now, let's turn the tables and collect what is rightfully due to Rhode Island residents to help pay for the use of our roads. We have to optimize our approach as a state. I would now like to call on the governor, Governor Gina Raimondo, to update us on where this matter stands. Governor Raimondo.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori. Thank you to the Chamber, and thank you to all of you who are here today. It is wonderful for me to see this room packed with business leaders from every industry in Rhode Island, several mayors, House and Senate leadership, the Lieutenant Governor, members of the labor community. Rhode Island is at its best when we come together to solve problems, and that's what we're doing today. You know, a year ago, we weren't even really talking that much about our roads and bridges. And as we just heard from Lori, Today we have broad agreement that we must take action. We've been studying roads and bridges for a long time, and we know that they're bad. In fact, our bridges are the worst in America. Think about that, the worst in America. The least safe, most poorly maintained bridges in America. And so today we come together as Rhode Islanders, public sector leaders, business leaders, the chamber, labor, to say enough is enough, let's compromise, let's find consensus, and let's find a solution. And that's what this is all about. Now, it turns out that rebuilding roads and bridges takes money. I wish it didn't. I wish you could eat cake and lose weight. But you can't. You can't. That's true, you can't. It turns out it's disappointing. It is disappointing. We need money to rebuild our roads and bridges. And I can tell you, Senate President and Speaker and I have been working as hard as we can for the past 10 or 11 months, studying the issue, scratching our head, asking ourselves what is the best, most efficient, fairest way to get this done. You know, we thought about the gas tax. To raise a similar amount of money from the gas tax, you'd have to raise the gas tax over 11 cents. We'd be 18 cents higher than Massachusetts. No one would be getting gas in Rhode Island. They'd all be going to Seekonk and Attleboro. We thought about many other ideas. Fortunately, at the end of last year, the federal government stepped up. They passed a new highway bill, and that gave us a significant amount of additional money, and that allowed us to work together to make the plan even better. And so the plan that's before the General Assembly now proposes a combination of bonding, leveraging the new federal money that we have, and a very modest truck toll. Now, it turns out you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And by that I mean most other states already do this. In fact, nearly every other state from Maryland to Maine already tolls. And the toll, we are proposing to have it be capped at $20. So I'm here today to say, let's take action. Let's take action. And I will say, I can't thank the Speaker and Senate President enough for their leadership. You guys have been fantastic. This isn't easy. This is a difficult decision, but it's a decision that's going to put 6,000 or 7,000 Rhode Islanders to work. It's a decision that's going to allow us to say to the rest of America, we're serious about business because we want to have better roads and bridges. And we're going to put a lot of people to work in the process. And I would just say, nothing makes me more proud of Rhode Island than when we get to the table, leave the shouting aside, solve problems, put people to work, and move the state forward. And so I'm deeply grateful for all of you for being here, for your leadership, and for the Chamber for stepping up on a tough issue to make this happen. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mayor Elorza, who is here with us today from the great city of Providence. We are in his town. Thank you, Mayor.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Providence. I'd like to begin exactly in the same place where the governor spoke about, which is, it's very heartening to see everyone come together around such an important issue. Leaders at the state level, business leaders, labor leaders, folks in the community, and leaders at the municipal level as well. I'd like to recognize Mayor James Diosa and Mayor Baldelli Hunt for joining us here as well. This is just as important to us as municipal leaders as it is to folks as state house leaders. And from my perspective, Rodeworks is a proposal that has such great potential to benefit both the state and our municipalities. We need to think about this legislation as something that will benefit every city and town and every visitor to our state. This program will assist in funding these much-needed infrastructure improvements right here in Providence. And, as you look at political conversations at a national level, it seems as though the bickering is as contentious and as antagonistic as it's ever been. But if there's one issue that has broad and widespread support, regardless of Republican or Democrat, It's the investments that we have to make as cities, as states, and as a country in infrastructure. You know, in leading economic development efforts here in the city, you know, we're often talking to outside investors and developers, and we're pitching them on, you know, why they want to be here in Providence, why they want to be here in Rhode Island. And I can tell you that there's a very compelling case to be made, but when the conversation turns to infrastructure, we can't keep talking about the potential that we have. We have to talk about the reality on the ground. And this is concrete, literally and figuratively, something that business leaders are looking for when they're considering Rhode Island. And by coming together as one state with different interest groups and leadership at the State House, the business community, and labor, we can come together and make sure that we fix our roads and bridges so that instead of being at the very bottom, we will be at the very top. And so additionally, here in Providence, I have an added interest because, you know, one of our failing bridges is located right here in our city. You know, we've all been there. It's the 610 connector. You stand under it and you can literally see the bridge falling apart. It's a safety issue. It's a health issue. But then as we transform that 610 connector, it opens up a world of opportunity for what that can do to that neighborhood if it's opened up to the back of Olneyville and also Silver Lake. So not only are we putting people to work, we're also creating new opportunities in our cities and in our communities. And because of that, you know, I am proud to be here, along with all the state and business and labor leaders, to say that Providence supports this because it's the right thing for our city, it's the right thing for our state, and it's important to get our state going again, and to attract the kind of investment that we desperately need. So I can speak for a very good handful of municipal and business leaders when I say that we need Rodeworks here in Rhode Island to make sure that Rhode Island is working again. Thank you so much. Hand it up to you.
I'd like to ask this question. Being born in Providence, Rhode Island, and our community and government is close together, what about his job? What about his job? I think that
We'll catch up a little later.
At this point, to discuss the issue of collaboration, I'd like to call up the Chairman of the Board of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, Peter Andruszkiewicz.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Lori. I'm excited to be here and honored to be here on behalf of my colleagues at the Chamber and the Chamber Board to tell you what we see. We see really a new day, and it's been talked about already by several of the speakers. And you know, it's super exciting to us to see a new kind of collaborative model of public-private partnership coming together. And I could give you a lot of examples, but the one I thought would be was most meaningful to me, I guess, in my role at the Chamber was right after the governor was elected. Literally, it was about a year ago, Christmas time, I guess. George Nee and Mike Sabatoni called Lori and said, we want to sit down with you and your new chairman and talk about issues in the state. And we sat over in Starbucks for like an hour and a half, as I remember that day. And at the end of the conversation, we all sat there and looked at each other and said, you know, there's probably 80% of the issues that we deal with where we are completely aligned. And boy, what a difference we could make if we worked together in a different kind of a way. And I think that's what you see happening on a broader scale here with the city government and the state government, between business and labor. You know, there's more aligned interests and common goals than there's ever been before. And a lot of these problems, like infrastructure, like bridges and roads, are difficult issues. They're very hard. And there's no way you can do, any one entity can do it on its own. So it's very encouraging for us to see like-minded leaders in the state come together to solve these hard problems, and we're happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
The issue of mass transit and transit in general has been a subject of particular interest to Grow Smart Rhode Island. And to address that aspect of it, I'd like to ask Scott Wolf, Executive Director of Grow Smart, to come forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurie, and all the other distinguished civic leaders here today. I run an organization that is very focused on promoting sustainable and equitable economic growth in Rhode Island. We have a lot of business leadership on our board at Grow Smart Rhode Island. And we feel that there are three ways to strengthen Rhode Island's economy, three of many ways, but the three that we focus on are urban and town center revitalization, strengthening our public transportation system, and maintaining a vibrant agricultural and food system in Rhode Island. And one of the key reasons why we're supporting enthusiastically this particular initiative is because without it, there will be virtually no funding for transit in the future, because the cost of repairing our bridges will be so exorbitant if we don't deal with this issue now that it will crowd out funding for almost any other kind of transportation investment. So we think this is a prudent investment in the state's future. We think it's fair. We think it is very much a mainstream initiative. And it's very much in line with what most other northeastern states are already doing. And it's a good combination of creativity, of having a sense of urgency, and of having a fair and equitable and sensible solution to our long-range problems. And we believe that Rhode Island's best days are ahead of it. We believe that we can capitalize on our compact development patterns to have one of the best public transportation systems in the country, but we can't do it if we don't have a good foundation with our basic infrastructure, and that certainly includes our bridges and our roads. So we back this enthusiastically. We're disappointed about all the mythology and all the heat that's been shed on this without too much light, but thankfully today I think we're shedding more light on this issue. And just one final thought, and this is something I'm stealing from the governor. The governor has said, I think very profoundly, that you can't have a first-class economy or have first-class jobs if you don't have first-class infrastructure. It's a basic formula that we can't ignore, and by backing this program, we are not ignoring it. We are leading, I think, aggressively and in the right way for Rhode Island's future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Scott. Before we continue, I'd like to just recognize a couple of other individuals who have joined us today. Obviously, our Lieutenant Governor, Dan McKee, thank you very much for coming. Also, the Mayor of Woonsocket, Mayor Baldelli Hunt, Lisa Baldelli Hunt, thank you very much, Mayor. And also Central Falls Mayor James Diosa, thank you very much, Mayor, for taking time out of your schedules. At this point, we will hear from Lloyd Albert. Lloyd is Senior Vice President of Public Affairs and Government Affairs for AAA.
Thanks, Laurie, and good morning, everyone. For decades now, for 20, 30, 40 years, motorists across Rhode Island have dutifully paid their fair share of the gas tax with every fill-up. They've also paid auto registration fees and their state inspection fees on time and in full. In return for their investment, they've had a reasonable expectation that the roads and bridges upon which they travel to work, to school, to the grocery store would be reasonably maintained. Instead, they awoke last year to a news report indicating that 177 bridges across the state, nearly 23% of the bridges listed on the National Bridge Inventory, were classified as structurally deficient. Given these facts, AAA is urging the General Assembly to take immediate action to address this looming crisis. As an organization heavily invested in safety of our members, our overarching concern here, of course, is the condition of this deteriorating infrastructure and how quickly it can be repaired. We cannot stress enough the urgency which we attach to this initiative. As the General Assembly deliberates this week on the Rodeworks plan, we ask that its members deliver to Rhode Island taxpayers a comprehensive solution for bridge repair, one that provides a reliable and a sustainable funding stream to get the job done. Also, we believe the Rodeworks plan must include a high level of transparency and accountability for the way funds are being expended. After all, motorists want and they deserve fiscally sound management of the dollars they invest in their transportation system. In another 20 or 30 or 40 years, we should be able to look back and know that we made the hard choices necessary to deliver a world-class transportation system to Rhode Island motorists. That will only happen if we demonstrate the leadership and the commitment today to create infrastructure that enhances the safety and mobility of all Rhode Islanders. We owe it to our investors, the taxpayers, to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. That issue of transparency is very important, and I know it's one that's on the minds of everybody that's standing up here today. Our next speaker is Michael Sabatoni, and Michael is president of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades. Michael.
Thank you, Lori. Good morning, Governor, Speaker, Madam President. Just let me first start by saying thank you for your leadership on this issue. This issue has been an issue for a long time, and it's nice to see that the courage to finally tackle this issue. There was no easy solution to this problem. What I'd like to focus on this morning is the aspect of the jobs that will be created, but with the passage of this legislation. Attending the hearings at the State House, some of the concerns that we've heard, will we be able to meet the demand of the jobs that will be created? And the answer is a resounding yes. We have a program that's called Building Futures, and this Building Futures program has had great success in the placement of our candidates since 2007. And I just want to leave you with some statistics. The placement demographics of this program, 80% are non-white. Average age is 27. Male and female, 173 males, 17 females. Children of the placements, 159. Unemployment at the entrance in this program, 80%. Low income at the entrance of this program, 100%. Prior court involvement, 55%. Last year employment retention rate, 95%. 5-year employment retention rate, 83%. Average starting wage, $17 an hour. Average wage upon completion and entering in a building trade apprenticeship program, $37 an hour plus a $23 an hour benefit package. Well, if this truly isn't economic development, then I don't know what is. Meeting the skills gap, training young men and women, most of which come from our inner cities, and we have Marvin Lewis here with us today, who is currently taking a welding program down in the Oneyville section where we do our training in our Building Futures program that is ready to go to work and meet the demands that you see on the pictures that are up here. Now, you don't have to be a civil engineer or an expert in the construction industry to know that these don't look quite right and need some attention. Well, with the foresight of the General Assembly, Marvin is going to finish up his program. He's going to come into the Building Trades Apprenticeship Program and get out there, and I know you're going to do a great job, Marvin, and help us fix our roads and bridges and give us a 21st century infrastructure that we can all be proud of. And the true economic impact that will have on Rhode Islanders. These are jobs that will not be outsourced, and we will meet the demand and give people opportunities while investing in the business community and bringing commerce up to a level that they can all be proud of. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of this coalition, and I thank you all for your leadership on a tough issue and the courage to face it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm particularly pleased to welcome back to the Chamber the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. And we discussed this issue of Rodeworks with them last week at the Chamber's Legislative Outlook Luncheon, and they were both very strong on this issue and had a number of very compelling points about how we need to move forward with this plan in order to safeguard our economic development future. So at this point, I will call on Speaker Mattiello to come forward and share some of his thoughts on this.
Thank you, Lori. I want to thank the Chamber for its leadership on this. I want to recognize that I want to thank everybody here first. I mean, we have a coalition of labor, business, groups whose primary mission is moving Rhode Island forward economically, all coming together because we have the worst infrastructure in the country. As I sit up there and I listen, I was listening to the governor very closely, as I always do. We're talking about one of the biggest, most important issues relative to a strong economy, and you've got so much noise out there regarding it. Since I've become Speaker, and most of this with the all with the collaboration of the Senate President, a lot of it with the governor, because she wasn't elected when we started, we reduced the corporate tax rate in Rhode Island. We exempted sales tax on energy costs to assist businesses. We raised the exemption on the estate tax to keep our successful folks in the state of Rhode Island. We eliminated the tax, Social Security tax on many Rhode Islanders, so that we can assist the middle class after a lifetime of commitment so that they can stay and thrive in Rhode Island. We eliminated tax on radiology services to assist that industry. We have been laser focused on moving our economy forward and doing the types of things that builds economic wealth and growth and jobs in the state of Rhode Island. And then I hear that there's a consensus that we have the worst roads and bridges in the country, and it is the leading concern of businesses. It's the #1 driving force for businesses in their decision making. The worst in the country, and all the leaders have done for the past 50 years has kicked the can down the road to today where we have highly deficient bridges. And I suspect I know why that's the case, because it sometimes becomes highly charged whenever you try to do something that's very productive and in the constituents' citizens' best interest. I want to applaud the governor for her leadership on this issue. She's been laser focused on the economy. She recognized the problem, and she brought it to the point where we are. And it took a lot of collaboration between myself, the governor, the Senate President, and a lot of business leaders out there and a lot of labor leaders out there. Everybody came together to make a better bill that we have in front of us. And we're not reinventing the wheel. We're basically doing it the same way that most states in the northeastern seaboard corridor does it. So it's been proven effective, and all the states that do it have a better infrastructure system. And being an outlier in this instance puts us at a disadvantage with other states because they charge the tolls, our consumers are purchasing goods that come through those states, and they have better infrastructure. So that better infrastructure actually helps them attract jobs, attract companies into those communities, and we're not getting their assistance back into Rhode Island. So Rhode Island, being an outlier, not being able to fund its infrastructure, is placing itself at an economic disadvantage with other states. That's why you have this business coalition, this labor coalition, all these folks coming together. That's why the Providence Journal is endorsing this plan. The Providence Journal asked us to come together and to reach consensus as quickly as possible and move forward. The Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, I believe the largest business coalition in the state of Rhode Island. And not everybody agrees on every issue. That's how human beings are. But the greatest business coalition in the state of Rhode Island is asking us to resolve the issues of this, to compromise, and to move it forward as quickly as possible. And the reason for that is what we're hearing this morning. It is the #1 issue affecting our economy right now, the #1 issue. And there's a lot of folks that want us to do nothing. And to those folks, I'm sorry. We're together with this coalition. We're together with the majority of the citizens of the state of Rhode Island, and we're going to work to make Rhode Island great. I want to recognize Director Alviti, who I've had the pleasure of working with. We have a director that's transforming the DOT, that's reorganizing it, and my experience with him, or my impression of him, is that he just wants to fix our infrastructure. He's concerned about it. His heart's in the right place, and he just wants to get bridges fixed so that they serve our community. So for that, Director, thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you on a very complicated and sometimes difficult issue. The governor deserves a lot of credit for her leadership on this issue. It's not an easy issue, and things that are not easy are too easy to kick aside, because it's sometimes easier to avoid political controversy and just worry about your own political future. I, quite frankly, believe that the citizens ultimately recognize who the leaders are, who move the state forward, who move the economy forward, whose hearts are in the right places, and who want to work collaboratively with all the folks in this room to make Rhode Island great. So for your leadership on this issue, Governor, thank you. And I also want to recognize and thank my partner in the General Assembly, the Senate President, Teresa Paiva-Weed. We work together very well, and her insight and leadership on a lot of issues make the process better. It's always a pleasure to work with the Senate President. Thank you for your leadership. So, as we move forward, I ask you all to stay together, to work in your communities, to talk to regular folks, because regular folks, it's an issue that everybody recognizes we have to address. There's sometimes, different opinions of how to address it. So let's talk about the realistic options, and talk to folks and say that this is part of making the state great. When we walk together, we will all be stronger, and we're not going to have the worst infrastructure in the state in 5 or 10 years. We're going to be at least average, and we're going to be working to reach the top. It's going to take us some time, but with the leadership of a lot of people and all of the folks in this room, we're going to work on getting there. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another champion on this issue is the Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed. We have long been aligned on so many issues affecting our workforce, affecting our green economy, which is a topic of particular interest to the Senate President, on tax issues, and a whole host of other issues. She is a champion on the topic of infrastructure, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce her here this morning. Madam President.
Much has been said, but I, too, want to thank the Speaker, the Governor, the business community most of all, as well as the labor community for coming forward today on this very important issue. As I've said many times, the challenge of our deteriorating transportation infrastructure is one that we can no longer ignore. What we needed in this state, which has been ignored for many years, is the leadership to come forward with a bold plan to address this. The governor has done that, and it hasn't been easy, and I want to say thank you for hanging in there in the recent months and dispelling the misinformation that's there. Thank you, Governor. We've listened to the public, and after listening to the public, we've made changes in the plan from its original proposal. We've also determined, as the speakers often said, that the governor's proposal remains the best proposal, with some changes that we've all agreed to after 10 months of working the numbers through. What are some of the things that we've done in this bill? Well, thanks to the federal funding that was approved in December, the borrowing was cut in half, and interest costs were reduced by 65%. Many of the folks that came out in opposition to this legislation did so before the new and revised bill came out. How do I know that? Because I've been answering calls over the past couple of days. The other thing is the average toll was reduced to $3 in response to concerns that were raised. And the number of gantries were also reduced. And perhaps most importantly, based upon a lot of the phone calls and public input, the new legislation prohibits the tolling of passenger vehicles without requiring the voter's approval. This Rodeworks proposal is critical, and it is critical if we are going to move the Rhode Island economy forward. I want to thank everyone who's here today to show your support, because I know that it hasn't been easy. Competing proposals have been raised, and as both the Speaker and the Governor said, we've asked our fiscal staffs over the last 10 months to run those numbers, such as proposals to increase the diesel tax or to divert funds from other priorities. Why do I feel confident as I sit here today? The Speaker and I sometimes show our yin and yang personalities. He focused as talking to you about the tax cuts that we've done and some of the incentives that we've done to save, to move Rhode Island forward. But what I want to say, because one of these proposals is just cut more money from the budget, is he has stood side by side with me and the governor over in her capacity as treasurer to take some of the most difficult votes the General Assembly could take to cut the budget. One of them was last year, and Peter, you were very much part of this, and that was cutting $70 million from Medicaid. That was a hard vote. That required a lot of restructuring of Medicaid and changes in the budget. And we made that cut last year, and it carries over to this year, and this year's budget again has more cuts to Medicaid. In addition, many of you in this room were not standing here cheering when we had to make those difficult votes to ensure the passage of pension reform. And that was a vote that quite honestly kept me up many nights, because it really did hurt people. But we needed to do it. We needed to slim down the budget to move the economy forward, to ensure the future safety net for all generations. And we made that vote. So I must admit, I get a little aggravated when I hear people say, just cut. We are cutting. We will continue to cut. And even if I didn't want to cut, I got the Speaker here making sure that I cut. And we will make sure it's a lean budget. But we cannot borrow this money. It would be irresponsible to borrow money through the funding of the Garvey without a revenue source. The revenue source that's been proposed, and the only one that seems to work with the numbers, and all the fiscal people have run it, has been the tolls. So I thank you for investing in Rhode Island's future, for believing in us for Rhode Island's future, because we know this isn't a vote or a bill that's going to show dividends next month or next year. And it makes me laugh when people say, oh, this is political. This is, in many ways, bad politics, because it's not the kind of thing that you see next month or by November when the elections happen, but it's one that future generations will see. Your children, your grandchildren will see, because we will no longer be at the bottom of the barrel with the worst roads and bridges around the country. And it's an equitable proposal that we believe needs to move forward. So with that, I want you to know that we are listening, that we thank you. And I will mention one thing, too. The Coalition for Transportation Choices has also written a letter in support, which contains many environmental groups who also believe in user fees as the right way to move forward in funding our bridges. So the coalition that has been spoken about today by so many, Business Labor, also has many other groups that support this. And to that end, I want to thank all of those, even those who may not be participating in today's press conference, for their support. The cities and town mayors, you didn't have to come today. Thank you for your leadership. And once again, we will move forward, and we will continue to listen, and we will look forward to working together with you, not only on this issue, but on other issues as well. Thanks.
And if I may, just for a brief moment, I want to thank Mayor Elorza, Mayor James Dioser, and Mayor Lisa Baldelli-Hunt for being here. And I know there's a lot of other mayors that are also interested in this in a positive way, because I want to point out that all of the mayors have problems with their infrastructure, with state roads in their communities, and I get requests all the time from my colleagues. I've got one of the worst roads in the state in my district, and DOT won't fix it. You call DOT and they say, well, we're happy to fix it and we want to fix it, but it's going to be 2025 because we don't have the funding. So the communities are forced to live with atrociously bad roads, and mayors can't get their roads fixed. So I appreciate your leadership, mayors, and this bill is going to provide a revenue source, a steady revenue source that all of our infrastructure needs, whether they're maintenance, whether it's painting, cutting the grass at our state parks, our storm drains, repaving, whatever our community needs, we're going to be able to do it. It's an austere plan, as the director indicates. It's going to get our current infrastructure to a certain level, and that the cities and towns desperately need. But beyond that, in the out years, we'll be able to do grander things so that we can really work on improving our transportation system and moving our economy forward. So I hate.
You both have the votes?
Yes.
You say yes.
I've already commented about that several times. Very strong vote. The House of Representatives, I only speak for the House, not the Senate, so I don't exclude them. The House of Representatives has been working on the economy, jobs in the economy. They recognize how important infrastructure is to the economy. So, of course, we have the votes. The responsible, strong vote, the right vote, voting with a strong infrastructure system, a safe bridge network, is to vote for this. I could not, as an elected official, vote against it. And everyone has the right to vote any way they want. But I could not vote against this because I'm going to vote for safety. I'm going to vote for the number one thing that matters to business, and that's good infrastructure. And therefore, yes, the House has a very strong vote for all the right reasons.
Mr. Speaker.